Hey y'all, welcome to episode 25 of the 69-minute Eargasm. I'm Grant Fletcher. You can find me on Twitter at Grant L. Fletcher. And with me as always is our host extraordinaire, the quintessential stud muffin, Joel Gertner. Joel, how's it going, man?
It's going really, really, really well. It's awesome, man. We're recording day after Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was great. Hey, is it really episode 25?
It is episode 25, believe it or not.
Amazing.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. Sorry, I had to get that in there. I couldn't leave it out there. But I assume you've slept off all the tryptophan by now, huh?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Getting the Black Friday shopping done there?
Squeeze did. She took care of that. I didn't do any. I haven't done any yet. I'm the worst. I wait until like the day before Christmas Eve to do my shopping. I'm really, really bad about it. Yeah,
I don't go out either. I like sleeping, is what I'm a big fan of here too. It was a good Thanksgiving though, nonetheless. The Saints won. They clinched the division, so I'm happy with that. Maybe as a Christmas gift, they'll get home field advantage through the playoffs. I'm not sure. I know.
Yeah, well, who that clinched the division?
Yeah, you're a Jaguars fan. You don't have much to say about that.
I'm a Jaguars fan. Yeah. Yeah, but I just, figure, when in Rome, we're talking about the Saints, so, good for you guys. Saints won me $1,000 one time in a Super Bowl bet. They made it a pretty nice weekend for me one time. I had there was UFC the night before the Super Bowl, and then there was the Super Bowl, and that Saturday, Sunday weekend, like 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 6 UFC fights right. And then I got the Saints right on the Super Bowl. And I wound up with I was up like $1,000 between the two. So I've been kind of the Saints are a good out of town team for me. And especially New Orleans, man, is I think my favorite city in the United States. It really is a place that I always get amped up about going to. Been to both of the WrestleManias there and have done so much work there over the years and stuff. So I'm happy for the Saints, man.
Yeah, man. Hopefully they can do it again. New Orleans is great. Of course, you've worked with Wildcat Sports and Entertainment out there. I didn't realize you were such a gambler, though. Are you a regular Gorilla Monsoon?
Yeah, no. That's the funny thing is that I'm not, which means, as far as sports gambling, making that, I'm probably up lifetime, because I had that great weekend, and that great weekend really makes up a large part of gambling I've ever done. I'm not a regular gambler.
Okay, yeah, so it sounds like you're a lot further ahead than most sports gamblers are, man. I don't even play fantasy football anymore. It's just kind of, I've been burned way too many times.
On fantasy football, yeah?
Yeah, I thought maybe we could develop like a fantasy wrestler type game or something like that somewhere along the way, but I realized I would just end up losing out on that too. It'd be a losing battle no matter how I did it.
Flip coin. Like, do you think you'd be able to come in at like a 50% percentage if you decided to play like flip coin, like half an hour a day for like the next year or so? Do you think you'd come in around 50%, or do you think it'd still be kind of dreadful and you'd be coming in at like 32%?
God, no, it'd be awful. It'd be very awful. I was like born under a black cloud, and there was a ladder over the bed I was born in, and a black cat had walked by right at that time as well.
Wow.
Well, we hope you all out there had a great Thanksgiving as well. We've got a great post-Thanksgiving show for you, too. Joel, you want to talk about the lineup for today's show?
An amazing lineup. Our guests are really, really funny. The first one is just really tearing it up, just an unbelievable comedian, part of a great show that's got a lot of buzz around it. We're going to be talking with, and he's got a bit of a wrestling background as well, and not just as a fan either. It's a great interview that we've got with Trevor Wilson. What did you think of it, Grant?
I thought it was a great interview, man. It's a great talk. He goes into great detail about what got him started into the entertainment world and what got him interested in wrestling and how he became a comedian, and his time on Letterkenny here is Squirrelly Dan. I know a lot of people are big fans of that show, and they're big fans of Squirrelly Dan especially. Not to mention, we've also got a friend of Trevor Wilson's on the show here as well. A little bit later on, we've got RJ City going to be joining us too.
Found that out after the fact, yeah, that they know each other, and it'll come up if you listen closely. It'll come up how it won't come up exactly directly how he doesn't mention RJ City, but he'll talk about his time most directly within professional wrestling and training. And that's kind of the scene that they know each other from. But RJ is another Canadian and another funny man. And we have a couple of minutes with him as he talks about a subject that he's pretty passionate about.
Yeah, you can catch RJ on the acclaimed YouTube series RJ Makes Coffee in His Underwear. That's on his YouTube channel there. There's a lot of other good stuff on there too. You should check that out. Really entertaining guy, very funny guy.
Yeah, really unique character, really bringing a lot to the table, just different, and has a great sense of humor and really an asset to professional wrestling.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are tuning in looking for updates on Ray Dacron. The thing is, I mean, Thanksgiving week is usually a slow news week, and that's really the same here. We haven't heard a lot about it, but
we haven't. And we've been sitting on, because of the ill fortune that has befallen Ray Dacron. It happened to time out right around a time that it's prevented us really from being interested in passing along the information pertaining to, that can't possibly be a run-on sentence, right? But Gregarious Greg Hansen, who is a fan of the show and who has purchased a Grapplex shirt. The conditions, the scenario, the how and the why and the where of it all, of his purchase of a Grapplex shirt are I should have some light shown. He was the first to buy a Grapplex shirt, and we want to, on our end, as the Eargasm, and not as Grapplex and not as Ray Dacron, we want to shine a light, and we want it to be completely transparent as to what exactly went down that led to the purchase being made. So we have spoken with Gregarious Greg, again, out of respect to Ray Dacron, his family, his family, out of respect to him, I guess, and because it's contractually something that we're obligated to do, we are going to respect that the details should, for now, not come to light immediately. On this episode, we won't be bringing them to you, but in the very near future, because we are contractually obligated to promote Grapplex and Ray Dacron and do it in ways that are both positive and beneficial, and also in any ways that would be detrimental, as long as we pronounce the name of Grapplex right, which of course we never fail to do. So we will be thankful to Gregarious Greg Hansen. We really do pay him. We owe him a debt of gratitude, because it was harrowing. It was it was something that brought him great duress, brought him a measure of anxiety, and not to say that he felt his life was in danger.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. He may or may not have been under some duress whenever he made his purchase of a Grapplex t-shirt, but I can assure you listeners out there that if you buy a Grapplex t-shirt, it will not be under any duress. Maybe a little high pressure. Maybe you've felt some pressure from a salesman before, but no duress. You won't feel threatened.
And buying one of these shirts keeps us on the air for another week, and buying one of these shirts, it's a fashion statement, and it's there are other companies out there that sponsor wrestlers and that are independent third party pro wrestling and combat sports shirts that aren't tied in directly and affiliated directly with any particular promotion uniquely and exclusively, and this is along those lines. So you can feel comfortable wearing the shirt. Can you feel comfortable wearing the shirt? It is, we are told by Ray Dacron, made of cotton. The cotton, I've been told, is derived in a way that borders on being on the correct side of humane. Because otherwise I wouldn't, put money behind it. And it's, not everybody wears t-shirts. I know there's a kind of, there's a bourgeoisie and there's a very kind of savoir-faire. There's a lot of people who's, they're froofy and they won't deign to wear a t-shirt. And that's okay. If you don't wear t-shirts, then we might not expect you to buy one of ours, except to support our cause, keep us on the air, do a good. If you do wear t-shirts, like if you're going to be wearing a t-shirt anyway, then you probably need a new one. Not to say not to judge, but everybody who has things, it's just the calendar. It's time. It's a function of time that if there's a certain thing that you have, then there's always a number of new things that you need to get because you've got something old, something new, something in the middle. And if you need a new t-shirt, all I'm saying is, since you probably haven't been asked or begged to buy another new t-shirt from a different entity in the last 7 days or so, then, just kind of take the, initiative and take the step forward and take the hint. And as Ray Dacron would say, although he's either in jail or on the lam or dead in a ditch or at home in his palatial estate in Herzegovina or wherever he may be, and we'll figure that out. But as he would say, buy the shirt.
Yeah, rest assured, folks, we are on the case. And if you do buy a t-shirt at prowrestlingtees.com/Joel Gertner and you leave your phone number when you do so, Joel will give you a call.
Yeah, and you might even get a call from like a Pro Wrestling Tees employee who sees the number and, thinks that calling you would be a good time, either for you or for them. But that probably won't happen. They're not in the business of intercepting other people's phone numbers. That they don't need to. They run a sophisticated shop there.
Yeah, and if you don't buy a t-shirt, we are gonna
sell your phone number to And I know there are companies out there that'll pay. Like some of these companies will pay probably $1 a head. You know what I mean, for these phone numbers that match names. And who am I to turn down money, right? But you don't have to worry about me selling your phone number. I probably won't do it. And I'd be the last person you'd suspect if you got a spam call anyway. You wouldn't think to yourself, oh, I wonder if Joel Gertner sold my phone number for like 95 cents to somebody like a company that does inside sales or whatever. Like I wouldn't do that. You don't have to worry about it. So if you buy the shirt, we're just happy, for the sake of the show that you've bought the shirt. You don't have to worry about me selling your personal information, like your name and your phone number. Even though obvious, it's not too hard to do. I would know where to sell it, but I wouldn't though. So.
Yeah, in the world of personal information, phone numbers, they don't even go for that much money anymore. So we just don't even sell them anymore.
Right, exactly. No, of course not. No, absolutely not. You wouldn't have to look at that. Right. And whatever else we were going to talk about next, Brent.
Yeah, of course. Next, for sure. Yeah, we probably should just get this show on the road. What do you say?
Yeah, we absolutely should. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, that phone call you got from China, not my fault. And ladies and gentlemen, this is Trevor Wilson. Well, we are back with more of the 69-minute eargasm. Our guests this week, people who are familiar with our show know that we have a love for all things comedy, and those people who bring that gift and that talent to us, those people who bestow comedy upon the world of professional wrestling and the world in general. We have had on our show, the very first guest ever on the show, a handful of years ago, was Judah Friedlander. We have also had on the show recently Taylor Williamson. And today we are also going to a comedic mind that really a great dude and loves wrestling, and a really interesting cat who I'm going to want you guys to learn a lot more about from his own mouth. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the one and the only Trevor Wilson. How are you doing, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Thank you for asking. The one thing that I always try to do at the beginning of the interviews is go right to the beginning.
I try to, because, especially if it's people in the wrestling community, but no matter who it is that we're having on, it really seems that, as lives kind of progress and people get more unique and people have different experiences, and that's what kind of makes us different. But the people who are on this show, a lot of them is because they have some sort of involvement or they have a very deep love for professional wrestling. And I wanted to ask you about that and find out from you, we all have a childhood, we all have a growing up, we all have a beginning where we're not yet in whatever business we're in, but maybe we're thinking about doing that one day. Maybe when we're kids, we're not yet thinking about doing it. But I guess my question to you would be, what was it like growing up as K. Trevor Wilson? How were things, what did you do as a kid? What were your hobbies? How early did you know that comedy and acting and entertainment might be for you? But if you wouldn't mind putting a particular focus, tell us about your exposure throughout your life to wrestling, being somebody who admires it or as a fan, and just let us know, what's the first wrestling you saw and how did you know that it was something that you enjoyed?
Oh well, that's I think I had a pretty average, basic upbringing. I grew up in Etobicoke, which is like a suburb borough of Toronto. It's part of the Greater Toronto area in Ontario. I'm the second of four kids. My dad's a stockbroker. My mom was a teacher, but stopped that to become a homemaker and raise us kids. Pretty nice upbringing. I can't complain. We weren't the richest family in the neighborhood, but we never wanted for too much, and parents worked really hard to make sure that the four of us were happy kids and had everything we wanted. I actually came from an entertainment family in a way. My grandmother was a vaudevillian back in the day. She her and her identical twin sister had a song and dance team at the turn of the century called the Pierce Sisters, and they started in their hometown of Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and toured all over Canada. They actually did showboat tours when they were about 18, and for a while owned their own dance studio in Vancouver before the Depression sort of took away things like dance lessons. And but performance has always been in my family, and I always grew up wanting to be funny like my folks. My dad exposed me to comedy as an early age, and I think I was about 7 when I was watching Uncle Buck, and I realized that John Candy was at work when he made that, and that was a job that you could have. You could go play pretend, and that was a career. So that's sort of when my interest in having a career in entertainment started. And as for my love of wrestling, I think my earliest memory is watching Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov squash jobbers on an 80s Superstars broadcast. But I think my first real exposure to it was probably Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, the cartoon series. And from there, wrestlers were just larger than life. They were superheroes. And when I was a little kid, it was the closest thing to real life superheroes, in my opinion, was these crazy guys in tights, body slamming each other and jumping off the top rope. And my brother and I and the neighborhood kids used to, clear spot in our basement and give each other flying elbow drops off the couch. And as I got older, I just got more interested in it. Well, a lot of my friends sort of, were like, oh, wrestling's, for kids, wrestling's dumb or wrestling's fake. I was like, this is amazing. And the more I learned about the world and the more I got immersed in wrestling, the more interested I was. And as I've become older, I'm 38 years old, and I I go to indie shows whenever I can. I support wrestling in any way I can. Whenever I go to the show, I always bring money to hit up the merch table, and it's just the most fascinating, American art form is pro wrestling. Started out of carnivals and, grew into a world-spanning, billion-dollar corporations, all making their money out of what started off as a carny gig. It's just the most interesting thing in the world to me, and I can't fully explain why, but I just love it. It's insane.
How do you think they compare? I mean, how do you think wrestling and comedy, like, whether we're going to phrase it in terms of what could wrestling use more of that you see more in comedy, or what could comedy use more of that it could learn from wrestling, or whether it's more, where are they alike? Where can you kind of draw comparisons, or anything that you've learned, directly from wrestling? But like, I guess, in your own words, as somebody who's familiar with both worlds, what kind of correlations do you think you can draw between wrestling and comedy?
I mean, stand-up comedy specifically is a North American art form. It really started on this side of the pond and went back to England and Europe. And, both jobs, as a career comedian, the one thing I can always compare with wrestlers is grinding it out on the road, is the real comparison, where, it's a labor of love. First of all, you don't get into either one of these businesses, to be rich. You want to be rich, open a funeral home. You'll always have money. But, stand-up comedy and pro wrestling, you do it because you need to. You do it because once you've done it once, you realize you're addicted to it and you can't stop. And you spend years making very little money, driving all over the place, playing the smallest towns, playing the weirdest gigs, and just living in a car, pretty much. And doing it in your spare time too, because you usually have to have a real job to support your wrestling or comedy addiction. And I mean, the big difference between wrestling and comedy is that if I have a bad show, I probably haven't hurt myself or someone else. That would be the big difference. I don't have the physical risk involved. I don't get banged up in the same way as a wrestler does. But it's truly, you do it because you love it, and that's the thing I see in all the wrestlers I've met and all the comedians I've met is, if you don't really love it, you're not going to make it past the first year, because they're two industries designed to make it hard on you, because you have to really want it to do it. If you can't hack it, get out, because the business isn't going to benefit from having someone half-assing it in it. And they're both. That's the main thing. Just labors of love.
Now, how long have you been actively involved in comedy? How long would you refer to yourself kind of as doing it professionally and for a living? And how long also, kind of since your big break, how long have you been kind of on the radar mainstream? And just kind of guide us through your comedy career to date from the beginning up till now.
Well, I started out as a kid actor. I got into the business when I was about 14. My first job was I played a bully in the Goosebumps 1 hour special, The Haunted Mask Part 2. I got cut out of the actual broadcast, but I still get royalty checks every time it airs. I got a nice 50-cent check from them once. It actually cost more to mail it. I started working professionally as an actor when I was a kid. I've actually, at this point in my life, I've spent more time in entertainment than I haven't in my life. Got into the business, 14. Goosebumps was the first real gig, and then after that, I did a lot of like short films, a lot of Disease of the Week movies. For a good 2-year stretch, the only job I got was beating up handicapped people in made-for-TV movies. I played a lot of terrible people in the early stages of my career. I sort of had the young actor's curse, where I looked and sounded older than I was, which is great for drinking underage, but terrible for getting work as a child actor, because in that business they want older kids that play younger for a lot of years, because there's strict rules about child labor and how many hours a kid can work. So that's why the cast of 90210 were all in their 20s and 30s when they got cast to do it, because if you got real teenagers, you couldn't have them do half the stuff that they wanted them to do, and they couldn't shoot a full day because there'd be rules about the kids. So I spent a lot of time in my early days struggling because I've had this voice since I was about 13, and when I was in high school, I was 6 feet tall, 250 pounds. So I didn't play believable scared kid. I was bullies. I was goons. I think the only job I got when I was a teenager that wasn't playing a bully or a jerk in some way was when I was cast in a crime reenactment show, because I literally looked like an actual murder victim, which is the creepiest way to get a job ever. Yeah, and I stuck it through my teenage years, and I went to Etobicoke School of the Arts, majored in drama, and then after high school, I went to Humber College in Toronto to the Humber School of Comedy, Writing, and Performance, and it was there I did my first stand-up set in about 2000, so I was 19 when I did stand-up for the first time at a club, and then started toiling away at that for the next 19 years. I'd say my first big break in stand-up, like really big break, was probably 2011 when I got the Winnipeg Comedy Festival, and because they have a TV aspect to it, there's a broadcast, and so it was the first time I was on TV doing stand-up comedy, because they nationally broadcast that across Canada. And then the following year, I got Just for Laughs for the first time. And in 2013, I got my first televised spot on Just for Laughs, which is also broadcast in Australia and Britain and the United States. And my probably biggest break for American television was Jeff Ross's Roast Battles, when I did the first season of that, which was also taped at Just for Laughs. And that opened up a lot of doors for me and got people to notice. I was actually started also by getting to know more of the professional wrestling world, because I had a few wrestlers. Actually, the Blue Meanie reached out to me after I did Roast Battles to say he really enjoyed the show, and he figured I was a wrestling fan because in all the promo stuff I was wearing my shark tooth Macho Man glasses.
Nice.
And then actually Just for Laughs is where I met the producers of Letterkenny, and that, Letterkenny's been the big push for me, especially now that it's on in the United States, and actually we just debuted in Australia this year, which is pretty crazy. And so the first big break for me, 2011, and then in the United States, probably Roast Battles, and it's just been a nice climb ever since. I just keep trying to work as hard as I can and keep my face and name out there, and really just enjoy the fact that I can make money doing the thing I've always wanted to make money doing.
But tell people who might, in case they're unfamiliar, tell people listening and getting exposed to you for the first time, and people who might not have seen Letterkenny, tell them about that and you on there.
Well, Letterkenny is a show based and set in the fictional Ontario city of Letterkenny. There was actually a real Letterkenny at one point, but it's now an abandoned mining town. But it was chosen as the location for the show because they didn't want to offend any actual city. And it's a show about small town life. It's about a town of 5,000 people, and the main social groups are the Hicks, the Skids, and the hockey players. Skids being the code word for, the punk drug addict kids. And it's a comedy about small town life. I play one of the Hicks. I'm Squirrelly Dan on the show. I'm the long-winded storyteller of the Hicks contingent, and it was created by the series star Jared Kiso, who plays Wayne on the show. He created Letterkenny. It actually started, or initially, its very basic roots are It was a Twitter account based on his hometown of Listowel called Listy Problems, but he and his best friend Jordan used to just come up with jokes about what it was like living in a small town in the form of complaints from townspeople. And he sort of looked at the account one day and realized that this joke account about a town of 5,000 people had 15,000 people following it. And he's like, okay, so there's legs for Listy Problems outside of Listowel. So he got permission from Jordan to turn Listy Problems into a series of sketches. And at that point, he decided to change the name from Listowel to Letterkenny to avoid offending anyone from his hometown. And then with the help of his buddy Teddy, who's a filmmaker and director, and his buddy Nathan Dales, who plays Daryl on the series, they did the original YouTube shorts for Letterkenny Problems. And I think they did about 4 of the original shorts, the first 2 being the straight-to-camera complaint section, sort of a direct takeoff of Listy Problems, where they just list off complaints from a small town. And then the next 2 were the hockey players and the skids sketches, which were more scripted and introduced people to Wayne's style of chirping just about everybody in town. And, then those videos hit about 1 million hits apiece on YouTube, and there was interest to turn it into series. And I know he met with producers all over the place. A lot of the U.S. companies wanted to change it to be a more American show, and Jared was like, it's got to be set in Canada, or else it's not being honest. It's not the real thing. So he teamed up with an American production company, New Metric Media, and then they partnered with Bell Media up here in Canada, and we became the flagship show for Crave, which is Bell Media's streaming service up here. And I got involved the old-fashioned way, went out and auditioned for it, and landed the role of Squirrelly Dan. I believe my role was actually originally meant for Dan Petronevich, who plays McMurray on our show, but he had a bunch of things going on when the show was in production that prevented him from being as involved as he wanted to, so he couldn't commit to the role of Dan. So they crafted the role of McMurray for him, and I was second choice for Dan, and they brought me in. And it's one of those things that works out the way it works out. And because I don't know if the character would be the same and the show would be the same if it was, if what happened didn't happen. But here we are, and I'm in Sudbury right now filming what's going to be like season 9 of the show. So from just a few short years, it's become this. We became a hit out of the gate in Canada, and then we became one of the most pirated shows on the internet. And then now we're on Hulu in the States, and we've just debuted in Australia. And there's actually now selling off, like, different countries want to produce their own versions. I think there's rumors of a French version in the mix, but I'm not privy to all the information about the show. But it's a fun show. If you've ever even looked at a small town, you'll recognize the characters. And the one thing we've discovered doing the show is, most of North America are small towns, and we're speaking to a large number of the population with these things. I always laugh because people, who grew up in cities will come up to me and say, like, oh, it's a funny show, but I don't believe any of those characters are real. And then people from a small town will come up to us and be like, so when did you follow around my family for a year to make a TV show? 'Cause I know all of these people.
That's awesome. So tell me, who, past or present, who are some fellow comedians that have resonated with you? I mean, who would you say are some of your favorites, whether it's going back to when you were a kid? You were talking about John Candy before. Whether it's going back to being a kid, being a teenager. I know you kind of started when you were a teenager. You were 19. But along the way, whether it's from the past or whether it's in the current crop of people who are out there now, who would you say are some of the greats as far as you're concerned in comedy?
I mean, I grew up, I'm thinking the first stand-up albums I owned were probably Bill Cosby. who, despite the horrible things he did, was a prolific stand-up and really, one of the greatest storytellers of our age. And I grew up listening to him, and it's quite sad what he did, because it tarnished the legacy of a guy that really influenced a lot of us to get into this business. But Bill Cosby was one of my big influences when I was a kid, if I'm being honest. Another one was George Carlin. I think A Place for My Stuff was one of the first comedy records I ever had. My dad bought it at a flea market, and that and Robin Williams Live at the Met, and I used to make him play those on repeat when we were on long car rides. Absorbed. Carlin really kickstarted my love of language and just how much comedy can be found just mining the English language, seeing how wrong it can be at times, but just how to play with it to bring humor out. And he is, an absolute master. You can go watch just about any of Carlin's specials, and they're still relevant and they still resonate. And the sad thing is we haven't progressed far enough from it. We haven't fixed any of the problems. But Carlin for sure. Robin Williams, grew up watching him. And Eddie Murphy was another one that I would rent Delirious or Raw from my local video store, and stay in my basement and watch him all weekend, and then go back to school on Monday and perform Eddie Murphy routines for my friends when I was in like 4th or 5th grade. I loved Eddie Murphy, and I'm really excited to hear that he's going to do stand-up again, because he was a big one for me. And and then Canadian comics too, like guys like Derek Edwards, who's been a touring comic up here in Canada for ages, and Mike Wilmot, who most American audiences won't know these guys, but if you ever get a chance, they're two absolute masters of their craft. And look them up on the internet. Derek Edwards and Mike Wilmot, two of the funniest human beings I've ever met and had the pleasure of knowing. And as I got older, Russell Peters was a guy I really loved watching when I was in high school, and now I have the joy of saying I can call Russell a friend. But when Russell showed up on the scene, that was a big game changer in my opinion. There's Mitch Hedberg. So many fantastic comedians. It's like wrestling. It's just, you're asked to pick your favorite, and there's just too many. There's too many great guys who do it. Guys and gals. I had the pleasure of opening for Roseanne a couple times, and I know that she's not everyone's favorite person these days, but there's no denying the importance she's had on the cultural zeitgeist of the world.
So now, to keep it, to keep you on your toes and to keep you honest, you actually helped me with a segue that I wasn't expecting, but the next question was going to flip it back to wrestling and ask, what are some of your favorite wrestling moments throughout time, or some of your favorite wrestlers? What wrestling product were you really, really a fan of? And just, let us know what you think is great about wrestling, who you think is great about wrestling, and what you think wrestling could maybe use a little bit more of, maybe a little bit less of. And let us know also, in 2019, currently, how much time do you have, and what's your involvement as far as being around wrestling, watching wrestling? What different companies do you get to see? That sort of thing.
I think, when I was a kid, I was a Hulkamaniac for sure, straight out the gate. He was the, first champion I remember as a kid. And I got into wrestling right in the height of Hulkamania, and loved watching him. Being from Canada, we didn't have all the same channels as you guys did in the States so, my main exposure was to the WWF product at the time. And I really had to look and search for other stuff. Like I discovered, NWA wrestling and AWA wrestling through, reading Pro Wrestling Illustrated as a kid. PWI was my big source to get wrestling news from outside of what I could see. But for the longest time, the only thing I really had was Maple Leaf Wrestling broadcasts on TV in Toronto. And, depending on even where you lived, like I knew guys who, in Alberta grew up on Stampede Wrestling, and, other guys in Manitoba got AWA Wrestling. But for me, it was the WWF product that really got me in. And then through my own curiosity and my own interest in wrestling, I sort of sought out the other avenues and the other promotions. So NWA was, and then WCW was the second one to pique my interest. And I used to scour video stores for any, VHS tape of any wrestling company I could find. And I remember being a kid and on a family vacation down in, I think we down in Myrtle Beach or someplace like that, and ended up at a flea market, and I ended up buying a whole bunch of Memphis tapes, which was like my first real exposure to Jerry Lawler, and seeing some of the classic WWE guys in a different light. I had I have a VHS tape somewhere of one of those tapes I bought in the States, and it was Terry the Hulk Boulder versus Dwayne Gill as the Executioner. And that was like my first time seeing a pre-Hulk Hogan Hulk Hogan. And I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, we started to get a bit more of the WCW product. TSN in Canada started showing WCW Power Hour early on Saturday mornings, hosted by Eric Bischoff and Missy Hyatt and Paulie Dangerously. And that was my first real exposure to getting to see regular broadcasts of the WCW product. And my brother and I became obsessed with the Steiner brothers and the Freebirds and Sting and Ric Flair and the Horsemen. And I started to become a real big fan of that product. And it was kind of interesting, like being in Canada, the Monday Night Wars didn't play out the same way up here as they did down there, because we didn't have to pick which show to watch, because Nitro wasn't on in Toronto on Mondays, because we didn't get TNT. We'd have to watch the recap show on TBS on Tuesday. So it was never a choice of which one do you watch. Monday was Raw, and then Tuesday was Nitro. And then the big fight came on Thursday when Thunder started up. That was the only time we really had to choose in Canada which of the two shows we watched. And the ECW product was even harder to find in Canada. I'd have to go to comic book conventions and buy bootlegs off of tape traders back in the day. It was funny. I now with the network and all that, you have so much access. But when I was a kid, like ECW was the show I had to seek out, and it was almost like wrestling mythology. Like I'd read about Sabu for about 4 years before I ever saw a Sabu match. So it has just been this legend of this insane person had been built up as a fan just because I could only read about it. And it's something that the internet has definitely changed. Like kids today don't know how good they've got it when it comes to finding wrestling. Like I remember for a brief spell, like it was WWF, or sometimes late night you could find a UWF broadcast because someone had bought up the syndication for it. But that was all there was. And now, as an adult, I mean, we're living in almost another golden age of wrestling. That's like 5 days a week. There's original wrestling programming on. You can the Impact offices are in Toronto. I've gone by and done some podcasts for them, and AEW kicking off, and now NXT and SmackDown and Raw. I mean, it's amazing. And with the indie scenes too. I mean, there's so many more, indie promotions popping up that just about every week you can find an indie show in Toronto and go see a different group of guys throwing down, and that's been a lot of fun. The nice thing about Letterkenny is it's opened these doors that I get asked to be involved with some of these promotions. I've been asked to come out and manage guys for a show. I've been offered actually spots in battle royals a couple times. I got to sit in on a Smash Wrestling TV broadcast with the announce crew and call a tag team match between the Well-Oiled Machines and Tabernacle the Team, which was a dream come true. I went full Jesse Ventura heel and just chirped all the wrestlers for the entire broadcast, which was a blast.
You sound like you might be able to do a good Jesse impersonation too.
I've been told I could pull it off once or twice. Let me see if I can pull out this stuff will turn you into a goddamn sexual tyrannosaurus. I actually did wrestling school for a hot minute about 8 years ago. I took classes under El Fuego in Toronto, it was originally some guy wanted to promote a wrestling comedy crossover show, and he wanted the wrestlers to be involved at the matches. So all the comedians that got booked for the show got invited to the training school to learn the basics, so we didn't fucking kill ourselves on this cross-promoted show. So we at least understood how to take bumps. And after a few weeks of going to classes, the promoter of the comedy wrestling show vanished. No one knew what was going on, but Rob was really cool and didn't take it out on any of the comics who showed up to class and invited us to keep coming back if we felt like it. And a few of my buddies kept going, and I went for probably a bit over a month of classes, but then my road career was really taking off, and I was really starting to gain traction as a stand-up, and I found I wasn't able to show up to class as often as I'd like to, and I started feeling like I was holding the class back every time I showed up because I was a step behind everybody, and also I was in absolutely terrible shape. But my big fear was injuring someone, and then I got reminded by my doctor that I wasn't supposed to be doing physical combat like that. I have a deteriorated lattice in my eye, so if I get struck too hard in the head, my retina might detach. So he definitely didn't suggest wrestling as a good avenue for me if I wanted to keep my eyesight. So I bowed out of wrestling school, but that honestly was one of the most positive experiences I ever had. Just I don't know if I've ever been in a more supportive group than a group of people, guys and gals, aspiring to be pro wrestlers. Like, there was never a second where anyone was like, it's the first experience I've ever had where if I said I didn't feel comfortable doing something, if I didn't think I was ready to do something, no one chirped me, no one gave me a hard time, no one busted my balls over it. Everyone was just like, that's fine. Stand back, watch. If you feel like you've got it, if you think you can give it a try, go for it. But if you don't think if you're not comfortable doing it, don't. And everyone was so nice and supportive, and just a great group of people. And I love seeing the guys. I get to see some of the guys from that class out there in the indies, and I support all of them and wish them all the best. Guys like Toronto, guys like Tarek and John Greed, they were far ahead of me in the class, but they were there at the same training school. And whenever I watch them wrestle, I just, feel a little bit of still that sense of camaraderie, and I wish them nothing but the best in their careers because they're such amazing people.
What's the road like for you lately? What's your travel schedule? Walk us through, because you're filming still season 9, I think you said. You're filming the show, but you're doing stand up on the road, so it's a mix of both. I guess maybe it might be different between when you're filming and when you're not filming, and maybe you can enlighten us and let us know a little bit about each situation. But walk us through, I guess, a given month in your life. And just whether it's the travel, whether it's the work, whether it's, what you have, spare time to do and what you like to do in your free time, without it getting too personal, without it getting too, nuanced, but give people a sense of kind of what it's like in any given month, whatever random month it might be, to be living your life as it is right now.
Well, we shoot generally 2 months out of the year for Letterkenny. We'll pump out about 7 episodes in a month. And our shooting blocks for the past few years have been, we do one in the summer, July or August, and then another one in the fall, winter, generally, end of October, November kind of thing. And for that, we film on location in Sudbury. So I move up to, I'm in Sudbury right now, and I have an apartment that the show provides for me, and I live in Sudbury when we're filming for the month. So it's nice because I have, I've been in this apartment for the last couple of years, so I sort of have a home base up here, and but I am away from home. It is technically on the road for a month, but it's a much nicer version of on the road, because back in the early, in the first few seasons, we didn't have apartments, we had hotel rooms, so it was living in a travel lodge for a month, which the first season it's great, but after a couple seasons it's like, okay, I'd like to cook, I can't eat takeout for the entire month. And then the rest of the year, I like to do 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. And the nice thing is that I'm at a point in my career where I can pick and choose, and I don't have to say yes to every gig. Going back a few years ago, it was, nonstop work. I'd be, I'd always try to come home. I think the longest straight I ever did before we started doing the Letterkenny live tours was 7 weeks straight on the road without coming home. And then now I like to, I'll do 2 weeks on the road and then come home for 2 weeks. And that way I can, see my family, take care of business at home, keep organized and have something that resembles a normal life. I also, I got engaged this year, but my fiance works with me. She's my road manager, and so she comes on the road with me, which is also a nice change of the past 2 years, is that the business is doing well enough that I needed to hire someone on to help, and I got to make it my girlfriend, now my fiance, is the person that did that. So when I go out on the road, she comes with me, and that has made the road a lot more palatable and a much nicer place, because I got my favorite person with me. And so we'll do about 2 weeks on the road together and then come home and have 2 weeks off. And she's up here with me now because she works on Letterkenny as the dog walker on set. She walks the dogs for the producers and the director. So everyone says she has the best job on the show because all she does is play with dogs all day. And it's a lot more time. Now I get to pick, the gigs. As I said, I don't have to take every job now. The TV show has afforded me a certain amount of freedom, so we can be a bit pickier and a bit choosier. But the other thing that started up is the Letterkenny live tours, which actually we're gearing up for another one next year. We're doing we've done 2 across Canada, and we did a small sampler back in June. We did 6 shows, New York, Minneapolis, and Chicago, which we sold out. And it's pretty awesome to say we sold out 2 shows on Broadway. And then in February, we're going to hit the road again. And God, we're going to be on the road for almost 2 full months of straight van life. And it'll be the largest tour we've ever done in the size, like the amount of shows and also the amount of cast. The first few tours, it was just myself, Jared, and Nate, and also Mark Forward, who plays the hockey coach on the show, is also an excellent stand-up and has been for many years. So the show originally was just Jared, Nate, and I doing sketches in our Letterkenny characters, and then Mark Forward and I doing stand-up as ourselves. But for the upcoming tour, we also have the hockey players and the Skids joining us on it for the first time, as well as Michelle Milet, who plays Katie on the show. And we're starting the end of February in Halifax, and we're finishing middle of April in Los Angeles. I think we're doing something like 50 shows, 52 shows. But we're literally, going across both countries. We're going to be in Nashville, Atlanta, Albany, all the big hubs.
Very cool.
But that's probably the most constant touring I do nowadays is the Letterkenny tours. If I was booking them, it would be a 2-week tour, and then I'd take 2 weeks off. But I don't book those.
What in your spare time, man? I mean, so obviously aside from comedy and acting, and then also aside from wrestling. So just looking at maybe something that we haven't hit on yet. But do you have time for hobbies? Is there anything that family or close friends, your inner circle, they look to you not just maybe as the guy that's into comedy and doing comedy and the guy that's into wrestling, but is there anything else that you kind of identify with as far as like a hobby?
I'm a super nerd. I collect comic books. I collect action figures. I started collecting Lego this year. I like stuff that a bunch of people shake their head at me and go, "That's for kids," but I don't think you only grow up if you want to. So I got a lot of nerdy habits. I worked professionally as a cook for 10 years, and now that I don't do it professionally, I'd say it's become a hobby of mine. I got diagnosed a few years ago with type 2 diabetes and had to take real control of my diet after that. And I'm proud to say after a couple of years, I reversed type 2 diabetes and have normalized my blood sugar, but became a big fan of healthy eating. So I had to learn how to cook healthy. So I actually do a lot of sugar-free baking in my spare time. And big comic book fan, big movie fan. I'm also like developing other projects. So I've been doing a lot of writing in my spare time. I'm creating a show based off of my stand-up. I had another show in development for a while that was actually going to be about pro wrestling. And we're still shopping it around, hoping to get it made. But I wrote me and some friends wrote a show about an aspiring pro wrestler. I have a comic book I've been working on in my spare time as a project. I'm putting out a Christmas album this year. I know that's linked to my stand-up, but I actually sing on the album, which has also been a hobby of mine for a long time. I've been a karaoke junkie for years. And and I try to stay close with my family. My folks live 10 minutes away from me in Toronto, which is great. And my brother lives 5 minutes away from me. Family I'm very close with and spend a lot of time with. I don't get to see all of my friends as much as I'd like to anymore. That's a good way to find out who your real friends are. It's your real friends are the people you cannot see for 2 years, but when you do see them, you pick right up where you left off 2 years ago, and no one starts bitching about where have you been. Those are real friends.
Right.
I God, I almost have too many hobbies. I don't. That was my problem for years as an entertainer. Is I tried to do too much, and I was okay at a bunch of things, but not really good at any one thing. And then I decided to focus on stand up, and I feel that's where I am with my hobbies now. I never know what the heck to do because I have too many options of things that I like to do.
So aspiration-wise, you've gotten a lot accomplished, and your comedy, acting. I mean, you've done a lot, and you're doing a lot. Aspiration-wise, though, you personally, if you're kind of critiquing yourself or being hard on yourself, or simply just wanting to kind of still have a bucket list of things that you do want to do that you haven't done yet, can you think of maybe a short list of what that might entail or what that might be, something that you would love to go ahead and do that just hasn't happened yet?
Well, I mean, I'd love to do more film work. I'd love to show up in a Hollywood picture, something like that. I'd like to produce some more stuff. I'd like to get one of the projects I've written made. That's definitely a goal of mine to have happen. Got a lot of stuff professionally I still want to do. It's always nice to take stock, and I'm constantly, I'm very lucky to be able to look back at what I've done and be like, wow, I've checked off a lot of wishes, from when I was a kid. I've been able to say I've done a lot of crazy, amazing things. And, if I died tomorrow, I'd die with a sense of accomplishment. I feel like I've done a lot of the stuff I set out to do, but if you don't have anything to look forward to, what are you doing? So of course, I'd love to do a Kevin Smith movie. I'd love to be in a Marvel superhero film, even if I'm just, some guy on a bus getting blown up by Doctor Doom. I'd love to be that guy. I'd love to call like a wrestling match for like a big company. I think that would be an absolute dream, or even be the ring announcer for a WWF show. That would be terrific. I used to do Howard Finkel impressions when I was a kid. When we pulled out our wrestling dolls, it was always my job to announce them down to the ring.
You and me both. Yeah, that was me too.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'd love to get put through a table. God, that'd be fun. I imagine it would hurt like hell, but
yeah, I was about to say that one I have done, and yeah, I don't know how much you're missing on that, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, so many things, but at the same time, 14-year-old me would be very impressed with 38-year-old me. Dave Chappelle took a selfie with me on his phone. Like, that's an incredible thing to say. I had brunch with Jake the Snake Roberts. Like, that's something I never thought I'd be able to say. But yeah, there's so many things I'd still love to do. You can't stop dreaming. Once you stop dreaming, you stop living. Yeah, that's the truth. Trevor, tell people that are listening where they can find you, whether it's on tour. We've got December coming up now. This is going to be released, I think, around early December. So we've got the end of the year, December, and then we've also got the first part of 2020 upcoming. Where can people find you, whether it's Letterkenny, whether it's on the road with Letterkenny or you doing your stand-up, whether it's your social media? How can people stay in touch and keep hearing from you and about you?
Well, I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as K Trevor Wilson. I'm the only K Trevor Wilson on the internet, so it's easy to find me. And I also have my website, ktrevorwilson.com, which updates on my shows, and also will be a good place to buy my Christmas album when it comes out on December 6th. And it's also going to be a double vinyl print if anyone is a vinyl collector out there. And then Letterkenny, available in the States on Hulu, available in Canada on Crave, and coming up live shows in January. I'm going to be in Niagara-on-the-Lake doing the Icebreakers Comedy Festival. And then February, I'll be doing a run of shows in Phoenix at the House of Comedy. And then the end of February through to the middle of April, I'll be on the road with the Letterkenny Live Tour. And we are hitting a lot of major markets. The details for that are, I believe, on the Letterkenny website. I think tickets are also available through Ticketmaster for that. And you know, we're trying to get to as many places as we can. And to all the people who were mad at us for not coming to Yorktown, we're sorry. We really have no control over that. We can't go to places, but don't hire us to go there. So, so if you're in Florida, I know you're mad that we're not doing any shows in Florida on this tour, but I did do a week of shows in Florida at the end of September. So we will be coming to Florida eventually, and I will probably be in Port Charlotte at some point next year doing stand-up. You know, keep your eyes peeled if you go to Disney World or Disneyland, because I'm a Disney junkie, and that's where you'll see me. I proposed to my fiance there, so.
That's very cool. Well, Trevor, dude, thank you so much, man. The time that we've spent has really flown by. I appreciate you taking the time while you're kind of in a busy season now, and we're recording this on a Saturday afternoon, which sometimes is one of the only opportunities in anybody's week that they might have a little bit of time to chill. But I appreciate you being just so flexible with scheduling and just as much as you can be. But you're so busy, and I really appreciate you being on with us. It means a lot for you to take this amount of time out of your schedule. And I want to thank you, dude, for what was an unbelievable interview. I had a feeling and I had an idea that you were as interesting and as diverse and as multifaceted as you were. But I even learned quite a bit in being on the phone with you here and interviewing you that I didn't know. And dude, I'm absolutely looking forward to getting into Letterkenny and looking forward to keeping up with you, man, because I wish you nothing but the best.
Oh, thanks so much, man. This was a real honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me to do this, Joel.
Thank you. And we'll have more 69-minute eargasm after this.
We hope you enjoyed that excellent talk with K. Trevor Wilson. Now we'd like to switch gears and move to a more educational part of the program. You see, there's a lot of information out there about the right way and the wrong way to become a professional wrestler, but not so much info on how to actually run your own wrestling show. So here to fill us in is RJ City.
If you want to run a wrestling show, you have to follow these rules. Name your company something very distinct and unique. All that's left right now is the Bing Boom Wrestle Hour or, hey, suplexes. Name your actual show something vaguely epic, like Day of Retribution, Rebellious Reckoning, anything that sounds like a Game of Thrones fan fiction. Make sure the poster has a very high contrast filter. Obscuring everyone's skin tone looks really cool. Hashtag WWE in all of your posts because you know Vince is watching. Try to pay everyone as little as possible except for a really big name that you spend way too much money on and isn't really worth it in the long run, but you get to take a sweet selfie with them. Don't have any food or water backstage. Hungry, dehydrated wrestlers are TV ready. Start the show with your own promo talking about how hard you work to make this happen. Yeah, the wrestlers are putting their bodies on the line, but you rented the ring. Take every WWE idea and just rename it. Money in the Bank match, Finances in the Institution match, 24/7 title, Anytime title. Make sure the wrestlers can sell their own merch and then give away free posters to the fans so they don't actually buy anything. Don't give the fans their money's worth. Give them more than their money's worth. Your show should be at least 4.5 hours long. You want everyone to be exhausted. If fans are leaving before the main event, then you know you've done a good job. Finally, announce your next show before immediately deleting your social media and never being heard from again.
You can follow RJ City on Twitter at RJCity1 and check out RJ's YouTube channel as well.
John Fantozzi here with Wrestling history today, December 2nd. Let's go back to 1963 to Salt Lake City, Utah, in a wrestler versus boxer match. The legendary judo Gene LaBelle defeated top-ranked light heavyweight boxer Milo Savage in 4 rounds with the LaBelle choke. 1969 in Japan, NWA World Champ Dory Funk Jr. went to a 60-minute draw with Antonio Inoki. This was the first NWA World Title match held in Japan in 12 years. 1974 in Dallas, Texas, Blackjack Lanza defeated Fritz von Erich to win the NWA American Heavyweight title. Also in 1974 in Kagoshima, Japan, the Giant Baba defeated Jack Briscoe to win the NWA World Heavyweight title. 1983, back to Dallas, the Von Erichs, David, Kevin, and Kerry defeated 2/3 of the Fabulous Freebirds and Ric Flair for the World Class 6-Man Championship. Michael Hayes could not participate because he had lost a loser leaves town match to Kerry Von Erich on November 24th. 1985 in Memphis, Tennessee, Jerry the King Lawler beat Tony Hawk in a loser wears a diaper match. We haven't seen one of those in a long time, thank goodness. 1991 in Sunrise, Florida, Jerry Lawler defeats Kamala, the Ugandan Giant, to win the USWA Unified World Championship. Jump to 2016, Ring of Honor final battle in New York City. Kyle O'Reilly defeated Adam Cole to win the Ring of Honor World Championship. I'd also like to note that going back to 1973 and jumping back just one day to December 1st, Stan Stasiak became the 5th Worldwide Wrestling Federation champion when he defeated Pedro Morales in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And that's wrestling history. But today, stay tuned for more Eargasm.